Hey everyone, welcome to Stories by Beulah. I'm so happy you're here. Get comfortable because we have another story to share with you. So let's get into it.
Before the loudspeakers at the mosque on Yemeto Road clear their throats for morning prayer, before the roosters in Alhaji Musa's compound start their daily argument with each other, Morayo Adewale is already awake. She rises in the grey light, careful not to wake 6-year-old Dami, who sleeps with one leg thrown over his wrapper, as though even in sleep he is running somewhere. She folds yesterday's fabric scraps into a neat pile beside her sewing machine, an old singer that groans on the reverse stitch and needs a new belt she has been postponing buying for 3 weeks because a new belt costs more than she can spare this month. Then she steps out into an Ibadan morning that smells of dew, frying akara, and the diesel of the first commercial buses coughing awake on the main road. Morayo is 26. 2 years ago, her husband Femi died in a motor accident along the Ife Expressway, returning from a delivery job that was supposed to change their lives. Since then, she has kept their small tailoring kiosk alive with her own 2 hands, hemming trousers, sewing school uniforms, altering agbadas for men twice her age who call her our daughter and sometimes forget to pay on time. She is not rich. Some weeks she is not even comfortable. But Dami has never once gone to school with a torn sock. And to Morayo, that is the whole of what matters. Dami is the reason for most of it. The reason she wakes before the roosters, the reason she has learned to stretch a single roll of fabric further than the tailor she trained her ever taught her to. He is a serious child for 6, more given to lining up his toy cars by color than chasing them round the compound. And some evenings, watching him frown over his times tables at the small table beside her machine, Morayo lets herself want one specific thing for him. That whatever life eventually asks of him, it will not ask him to grow up as fast as it asked her to. By the time she reaches her own kiosk 3 doors down, the street has properly woken up. Babatunde already parked under the almond tree on his okada, calling out to passengers with the easy rhythm of a man who has done this every morning for a decade. The smell of Sister Ngozi's fresh bread competing with the frying oil further along. A radio somewhere playing high life too loudly for the hour. Her walk to the kiosk takes her past the corner where Mama Fadeke sells akara and pap. Has sold akara and pap there, in fact, for longer than most people on the street have been alive. She rents a single room behind Alhaji Musa's second compound, 2 streets from Morayo's own house, and arrives at her spot before everyone else, dragging her bench, her stool, her firewood, and her basin of soaked beans, alone because there is no one left to help her with it. The first time Morayo truly notices, not just glances past, is a Tuesday in February. Mama Fadeke is struggling to lift the jerrycan of water from beside the gutter, her whole body tilting sideways with the effort, her breath coming out in short, stubborn bursts through her teeth. Morayo does not think about it. She crosses the road, lifts the jerrycan and carries it the rest of the way. My daughter, Mama Fadeke says, startled, wiping her hands on her wrapper. You no need to do that, oh. It's nothing, ma, Morayo says, already turning to leave. Good morning. That is all. Not long conversation, not even an exchange of names. A small thing done and then forgotten by the one who did it. Except she comes back the next morning. And the one after. Not daily at first. She has her own shop to open, her own son to feed and drop at the neighbours, but often enough that it becomes, without either of them deciding, something like a quiet appointment. She fetches the water before Mama Fadeke can bend for it. She strikes the match for the stove on mornings the older woman's fingers are too swollen with arthritis to manage it. She never sits down. She never asks for anything. She helps and crosses back to her own kiosk, and the day begins. Mama Fadeke, for her part, is not an easy woman to fuss over. She waves Morayo off more than she accepts help, grumbling that she has been frying akara since before Morayo's own mother was born, and that her hands no go pack up just because they shake a little. It takes weeks before she stops arguing every single morning and simply lets the help happen. And when a careless customer once complains that her akara balls are smaller than last week's, Mama Fadeke no miss a beat. Now your trouser we don't tie, they lie to you, no be my akara. The whole queue laughs, Morayo the loudest. By April, something has shifted. Mama Fadeke begins to set aside a wrap of akara, not because anyone asks, but in her own words, waving off things. Now this one, they help me like she be my own picking. When Dami passes on his way to school, satchel bouncing, Mama Fadeke calls him Alanu, the kind one, and presses a piece of akara into his hand, always insisting it's too small to count as a real gift. They begin talking, in the unhurried way Ibadan mornings allow. Mama Fadeke tells Morayo about arriving from a village near Iseyin as a young bride, about a husband who died only 9 years into their marriage, and about the more than 30 years since then that she has spent on that same corner, one careful pot at a time. 2 of her 3 children are gone. 1 to typhoid as a small boy long before Morayo was even born, and 1, her daughter Bosede, to an illness that took 8 months and every kobo Mama Fadeke had saved for her old age. Even now, on the anniversary of Bosede's death each June, Mama Fadeke closes the store for exactly 1 day, the only day of the year she does not sell a single wrap of akara, and cooks a pot of the girl's favorite ogbono soup for no one but herself. Her last surviving child, a son named Segun, works in Lagos in what Mama Fadeke describes vaguely as one company. He calls sometimes, he visits almost never. I no blame him. Lagos go hold person well. He get him own life. But there's a flicker of something else beneath the words. Something Morayo doesn't push at because some griefs are better left for a person to open in their own time, if they open them at all. Morayo in turn tells Mama Fadeke about Femi, his habit of whistling off-key too on purpose just to make her laugh, how Dami has the exact stubborn chin of his father, and how some nights she runs the kiosk account twice because she can't believe the total the first time. She is not telling it to complain. She is telling it because Mama Fadeke listens the way people rarely do, fully, without reaching for a phone.
There is a week in July when Morayo's own money runs thin. A client who never returns for an already finished agbade. A school levy Dami's teacher will not stop mentioning. And for 3 mornings in a row, she almost doesn't cross the road because every minute at Mama Fadeke's stove is a minute she could spend threading her machine instead. She crosses anyway on the 4th morning, telling herself it's only 20 minutes, telling herself Mama Fadeke needs it more than her thread needs threading. It is a small, private tug of war no one else ever sees, and it is perhaps more honest kindness than it would have been if it had cost her nothing at all. The fire happens on the last Thursday of August, a little after midnight. It starts 3 stalls down from Mama Fadeke's spot. A faulty generator connection at a phone charging kiosk, sparking against a stack of dry cartons. By the time neighbours awake to the smell of smoke and the sound of shouting, it has already jumped, greedy and fast, along the row of wooden roadside structures that vendors like Mama Fadeke built plank by plank, tarpaulin by tarpaulin, over years. Mama Fadeke does not live far, and she is among the first to arrive in her night wrapper, screaming for someone, anyone, to help her save her pots. Babatunde is already there, beating at the flames with a wet sack and shouting for the men nearby to form a bucket line from the borehole down the road. Somewhere behind them, a woman is crying for her own shop. Another vendor is dragging sacks of rice clear of the heat, and the whole street reeks of scorched wood and spilled kerosene. It is not enough. By the time the fire service truck arrives, delayed as it often is by traffic and distance, there is little left of that stretch but blackened wood, twisted zinc, and the sharp smell of burnt palm oil. Mama Fadeke's bench is gone. Her pots, her stove, her bags of beans and gari, all of it, 30 years of one careful morning after another, reduced to ash in under 2 hours. In trying to drag her frying pan from the flames, she burns her right forearm badly enough that Babatunde has to half carry her to the general hospital before dawn. In the chaos, no one thinks of the small wooden box under her bench where she kept whatever little she could set aside each week, wrapped in a plastic bag against the dust. By morning, it is only a memory, along with everything else. Morayo hears the news at 6 a.m. from Dami, who heard it from the neighbor's boy, who heard it from everyone. She does not stop to change out of her house wrapper. She runs. She finds Mama Fadeke at the hospital, her arm wrapped in gauze, sitting very still in a plastic chair in the corridor, staring at nothing. For the first time since Morayo has known her, Mama Fadeke has no words at all. "Ma, I dey hear," Morayo says softly, crouching beside her. Mama Fadeke turns, and something in her face, not quite crying, past crying, settles heavily in Morayo's chest. "Everything don't finish," she whispers. 30 years, Morayo, 30 years I dey build am small small. Now na so. Morayo has no answers. She has no money to rebuild a store. Her own kiosk barely covers Dami's fees this term. But she has hands and a house and a pot of her own. That evening, she brings food to Mama Fadeke's room. Not akara this time, but jollof rice and stew, cooked with Dami's help because there is nothing else she knows how to give. Mama Fadeke barely touches the plate at first, turning the spoon over and over in her own injured hand. "I no fit repay you for this," she says eventually, not looking up. "Ma, nobody they ask you to repay anything," Morayo answers, so plainly that Mama Fadeke for months has no sharp reply waiting. Morayo washes the one wrapper Mama Fadeke has left and sits with her well past the hour Dami usually demands his bath, because a person should not be left alone with grief like that. It is not enough to rebuild a life, but it is the beginning of something Morayo could not have planned, because kindness, practiced quietly for months, tends to leave a trail even when the person practicing it isn't looking for one. Word travels fast on a street like this. By the second day, Sister Ngozi, who runs the provision store 2 doors from where the store used to stand, has already started what she calls small collection. A notebook passed from shop to shop, market woman to market woman, each writing a name and whatever they can spare, from 200 naira to 5,000 naira. Her teenage daughter, roped in to help carry word of it up and down the street, ends up staying afterward to sweep the cleared site each afternoon, a habit no one remembers assigning her. "She don't sell akara for us since I be small girl," Sister Ngozi tells anyone who hesitates. "Now she trained my mouth to taste sugar for pap. Abeg no be big thing we dey ask." Babatunde organizes the okada riders who park along that stretch. They agree, without much discussion, that each of them will give 1 full day's earnings that week. Men who barely make enough to feed their own families, giving anyway. In the plain, unshowy way, people with little often give more than people with plenty. For Babatunde, that single day's earnings is real money. 3 months of it, saved naira by naira in a old Bonvika tin, was supposed to finally buy him his own okada instead of paying daily rent on the one he rides. He hands it over without mentioning any of that, and when someone later thanked him for it, he only shrugged. Bike go come. Mama Fadeke fire no go come twice. A group of young men from the area, apprentices, 2 university students home for the long vacation, spend a weekend clearing the debris and rebuilding a proper wooden frame, sturdier than the old one, using timber a local carpenter donates without being asked twice. Sister Ngozi, not content with the notebook alone, starts a proper thrift contribution among the market women, an ajo, so that whatever little Mama Fadeke manages to save again will have somewhere safe to sit. A woman none of them can place arrives one afternoon with a stack of new pots and leaves before anyone can properly thank her. Later, no one is quite sure whose customer she had been once, only that she must have been someone's once. It is not one grand gesture, it is dozens of small ones, arriving from directions Morayo cannot trace, the way rain arrives from clouds gathered somewhere out of sight. The most unexpected help arrives 11 days after the fire, in the golden slant of early evening, when a young man in a bank uniform parks a Hilux by the roadside and asks politely for the woman they call Mama Fadeke. His name is Kunle. He works at a community bank branch in Bodija, the same Bodija where 6 years ago, an uncle he barely knew took him in and enrolled him in a skills program that changed the direction of his life. He never fully left the neighborhood behind, an old area WhatsApp group, the kind that circulates news of bus pipes and stolen goats and, lately, photographs of a burnt row of stores being slowly rebuilt, still pings his phone most evenings. It was in one of those photographs, a young woman in a faded akara wrapper, carrying a plank of wood on her shoulder, laughing at something off camera, that Kunle had frozen mid-scroll, certain in a way he couldn't fully explain even to himself that he knew that face. He has rehearsed this moment for most of the 11-minute drive over, and none of the rehearsed versions prepared him for how ordinary she looks, doing something as unremarkable as passing planks of wood to a group of men. He greets Mama Fadeke first, then turns, and his eyes land on Morayo, who has come, as she does most evenings now, to help finish the new stall. "Wait," he says slowly, "you be Morayo, Femi's wife?" Morayo blinks. "Yes, how do you—" Kunle laughs, not from amusement, but from something closer to disbelief. The sound a person makes when a thing they never expected to see close finally does. He tells them, standing there in the fading light with the smell of fresh-cut timber around them, about 6 years ago, when he was 19 and had just walked out of a frustrating apprenticeship with a mechanic who beat him more than he taught him. He had nowhere to go and had been sleeping 2 nights behind a church in Okada, when a young woman, heavily pregnant, saw him on the curb, looking like he hadn't eaten in days. "You no remember me," Kunle says, looking at Morayo, "but you buy me akara and bread that morning. You no just buy am and go. You sit down. You ask me wetin happen. You tell me make I no lose myself because I lost my way small. You even give me your neighbor phone number, say make I call una if I need anything." Morayo's hand goes to her mouth. She remembers now that he says it. A thin, frightened-looking boy, one of many faces she has fed over the years without keeping count, because that was simply how she was raised. "That morning changed my life," Kunle says simply. "I use your neighbor number, call one uncle wey dey Bodija. He collect me, he enroll me for skill acquisition. Now from there, I enter banking. I never forget your face. I just never see you again until that photo." For a moment, no one speaks. Mama Fadeke looks between the two of them, the woman who has quietly helped her all year, and the young man revealing that her kindness given freely to a stranger years before Mama Fadeke ever met either of them now, has returned wearing a bank uniform. "Kindness no dey lost o," Mama Fadeke says quietly, mostly to herself. It just a find road back. Kunle's branch does not stop at a donation to the collection. He personally pushes through the paperwork for the bank's community fund to cover a proper zinc roof for the new stall, plus a small business grant Mama Fadeke will not need to repay, calling in favors himself, because as he tells his branch manager without much explanation, "No debt no dey settle with money, na so I dey settle mine."
Alhaji Musa hears the story the fastest way news travels on a street like this, from his own wife, who had it from Sister Ngozi, who mentioned almost in passing that your tenant for the back compound was the one whose stall had burned. He is not a man known for soft gestures. Tenants describe him as fair, but exacting, someone who collects rent on the exact day it falls due and doesn't pretend otherwise. But 2 weeks after the fire, he sends word that Mama Fadeke should come and see him. He offers her rent-free for the first year, a proper corner space with a concrete slab under the shade of his own compound wall, safer than the roadside, closer to her room, far from loose wires and careless generators. My mother used to sell food like this, is all he says, waving off her thanks the way a man does when in memory is doing more of the talking than he's entirely comfortable admitting. Make I no be that kind of man. By late September, Mama Fadeke's new store stands on Alhaji Musa's slab, sturdier, better shaded, with a bench long enough now for 3 children instead of 1. Morayo still crosses the road most mornings, though these days she's rarely the only one there. Babatunde often arrives first to lay the fire, and Sister Ngozi's daughter still sweeps the slab before school. In Sister Ngozi's record book, Mama Fadeke's Ajo contributions are already 3 weeks deep, small amounts faithfully entered, kept somewhere safer this time than a plastic bag under a bench. Dami calls Mama Fadeke Grandmama Fadeke now, and Mama Fadeke has started teaching him to fold moi moi leaves properly, scolding him with no real heat when his corners come apart. On the mornings Morayo is too busy to cross the road herself, Dami goes without being told, fetching a bench or fanning the fire, still in his school uniform before he has even mentioned breakfast, young enough to not yet know that what he's doing has a name. One evening in October, packing away the last of the pots, Morayo watches a schoolgirl she doesn't recognize cross the road to help an elderly corn seller lift his basket onto his head, quickly, without fuss, the way someone does a thing they've clearly seen done before. The girl continues on her way without looking back. Mama Fadeke, following her gaze, allows herself a small private smile. "You see," she says, "it don't pass to another person now." Morayo doesn't answer. She only picks up her basking, calls Dami's name and starts for home. The smell of wood smoke and roasted corn following her down the road, the way some things do, long after you've stopped noticing, you are still carrying them. Kindness is rarely a transaction. It's a seed, and the harvest often comes through a field we never planted. Morayo's quiet help to Mama Fadeke was never meant to be repaid, and a forgotten act of grace to a frightened stranger years earlier had already begun a journey she couldn't have traced. When crisis came, help arrived from a community shaped in part by kindness it had witnessed. Give without keeping score. You may never see how far it travels or how precisely it finds its way back. Has a small act of kindness you once gave or received returned to you in a way you never expected? Tell us your story in the comments.
I hope you enjoyed this story as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to Stories by Beulah. Thank you so much for being here. Bye for now.